Thursday. Felix had made a conscious decision to postpone taking action until the deadline set by the dictator had nearly expired, and only one day remained to make contact with them. "Hello, Your Excellency," Felix greeted as soon as he was informed that the phone was in Adolf's possession. "Did you call to inform me that you've accepted my offer?" Adolf cut to the chase, not interested in small talk and wanting to make the most of his time. "Yes, after discussing the matter, the headquarters decided to accept your proposal," Felix stated. "Good. Then come tomorrow with the contract so we can sign it," Adolf said, his voice filled with a hint of excitement and joy. "But the main headquarters has given us some conditions that need to be included in the contract for agreeing to your terms, Your Highness," Felix said, waiting for Adolf's excited voice to subside before adding his own input. "What are the conditions?" "Go ahead and state them," Adolf said, but this time his tone held no hint of happiness at all. "They've requested that the dividends be paid annually, starting from the day when the company officially begins operations after the merger, as a condition for agreeing to your terms," Felix stated, relaying the conditions as requested. "Why start counting from that day? And why annually instead of quarterly?" Adolf asked in a displeased tone, clearly not happy with the conditions presented. "According to them, it'll take that long for the company to start generating stable income, thus making it possible for dividends to be paid," Felix explained, trying to shed light on the reasoning behind the headquarters' condition regarding dividend payments. "Okay, then," the dictator replied after a brief pause, taking a moment to confer with one of his assistants who was also listening in on the call. "All right then. I'll be sending you the contract shortly for your review," Felix replied. "Send it over. I'll have my legal team review it, and we'll get in touch with you if there are any changes we need to make," Adolf said in a tone that implied he was doing them a favor. "See you soon, Your Highness," Felix began to say, but the call was abruptly ended by Adolf before he could finish his farewell. Rena Rothschild's mansion. Rena had finally secured the oath of loyalty from all the members by leveraging evidence of their cuckoldry against them. This meant that Rena had gained the support of 6 out of the 16 board members that had already sworn their allegiance to her. Today, Rena was officially starting to visit the remaining board members who had not been involved in the cuckoldry bullshit, the normal ones. "Miss, are you feeling okay?" Chloe asked Rena as they drove towards the mansion of the 7th board member. "What do you mean by that?" "What I meant was, are you feeling well? You have been visiting different board members for the entirety of the week, and it must be exhausting," Chloe clarified her question. "Ah, I see what you mean. I'm planning something and I need their help, hence the visit," Rena explained her reasoning without revealing any more details about her plan. She didn't reveal her plan to Chloe, not because she didn't trust her, but because she knew that the fewer people who knew, the lower the risk of it leaking would be. After Rena explained her reason for the visit, the rest of the journey continued in silence. Friday. Felix and his team of 3 arrived at the palace for the contract signing, and were swiftly escorted to the dictator's office by the security team. When they arrived, they greeted Adolf and shook hands. However, this time was different. Adolf didn't immediately start talking about the main topic and instead engaged in small talk with Felix, as if he was trying to hide his excitement and anxiety about signing the contract with them. "Your Excellency, is there anything else you would like to negotiate in the contract?" Felix asked, redirecting the conversation back to the contract. "Nothing. I'm very satisfied with the conditions, and there's nothing I want to negotiate in it," Adolf replied promptly. "May we proceed with the signing, Your Excellency, if it is not an inconvenience for you?" Felix asked politely, trying not to appear as if he was rushing the dictator to sign the contract. "Sure. Let's proceed with that," Adolf agreed to Felix's suggestion. Afterward, they immediately moved to the chairs where 2 copies of the negotiated contract were sitting on both sides for them to sign and keep 1 copy each. After sitting down, Felix discreetly reviewed the contract to ensure that there had been no tampering, without showing any sign of suspicion or distrust towards the dictator and his team, as he did not want to create any tension before the contract was signed. After ensuring that everything was in order, Felix signed the contract without delay. Aaron had given him the authority to do so, and he didn't want to waste any time in getting the deal done. After Felix finished signing the contract, he exchanged copies with the dictator, and Adolf also wrote his signature on it, officially ending the first part of Phase 1 in Aaron's plan. After they finished signing the contracts, they shook hands, and each person took a copy of the contract with them. While they were shaking hands, Adolphe turned to Felix and said, "Since we have already signed the contract, I have decided to help expedite your acquisition of the telecommunications companies." "How will you help us?" Felix asked, curious to know in what way Adolphe would assist them with their acquisition. "Next week, I will send an invitation letter to the owners of the telecommunication companies for a private dinner. I will tell them that I have something important to discuss, and when they attend, you can present your offer to them. If they agree, great. If they don't, then I will invite them to be one of the first people to be accommodated in our soon-to-be-opened gulag," Adolphe said with a creepy smile on his face. After hearing what Adolphe said, Felix forced himself to smile despite feeling uneasy. He replied, "I would be very grateful for your help, Your Highness. It's nothing to worry about. The sooner your company begins operation, the sooner I will receive my dividends. So, rather than saying I'm helping you, I'm just expediting my dividends," Adolphe said before smiling. "That's fine by me," Felix replied, feeling surprised at Adolphe's blunt and honest statement. After the conversation, Felix and his team said their goodbyes and left the palace promptly. They knew they needed to come up with a fair and convincing price for the telecommunication companies. It was important to ensure that the owners would sell willingly, instead of being forced to sell by the dictator. If they were forced, they might agree to sell, and then sabotage the company as soon as they escaped the country. The team had a lot of work to do to make sure the acquisition would go smoothly. Aaron could be seen riding a train heading to the Max Planck Institute for Human Development after successfully collecting brain data from the staff at the Max Planck Institute for Molecular Genetics. He had flown from France to Berlin after finishing the brain data collection of the people at CERN and most of France. As there were only 5 more stops until his destination, Aaron received a phone call from Felix. As soon as they exchanged greetings, Felix informed Aaron about the contract signing and the dictator's plan to help expedite the acquisition of the telecommunication companies. Aaron was slightly surprised to hear about the dictator's involvement, but was also pleased with the progress. Aaron smiled and commented, "It looks like he's eager to receive his dividends as soon as possible." "Yeah, it appears that his advisors came up with the plan after I informed them about our condition yesterday," Felix replied. "In any case, the sooner we complete the acquisition, the better off we'll be," Felix remarked. "Yes, I agree," Felix replied. "Take care," Aaron said, bidding farewell to Felix. "All right, take care," Felix replied before they hung up. Aaron then proceeded to stand up and move towards the train door, as he had arrived at his destination. After getting off the train, Aaron quickly put his phone on his ear and said, "Inform Alexander that we have completed the first part of Phase 1 of the plan. We need to keep him informed, or else he may start to suspect that we are not moving fast enough to fulfill our end of the bargain." "I will inform him, sir," Nova replied, and promptly sent the ordered message to Alexander. As she was currently monitoring him from his computer's front camera without his knowledge, to ensure he didn't do anything foolish like reporting their deal to anyone. A week later, Friday, Rena had finally finished collecting the oath of loyalty from all the board members, if you don't count her brother and the board chairman who she didn't try to make him swear his allegiance to her as he was the family head and her father. Another reason was that no matter how she threatened him, nothing will come out of it, as he usually doesn't interfere with the competition between the family member for the next family head, as he considered it the way to weed out the weak competitors for the next family head, so nothing good will come from antagonizing him. Following the completion of turning all the board members loyal to her, he contacted each member individually and gave them instructions on what to do in the upcoming board meeting. She wasn't going for anything groundbreaking like firing her brother or something, as that would raise suspicion in her brother's mind that she had all the board members on her side due to him having heard about her visit to all of them through the spies in the board members' houses. She knew that if she used it that way her brother would retaliate in an unexpected way. She wanted to prove herself to the family head so that it would make the family head choose her for her abilities in the company.
Eden.
The atmosphere at the presidential palace was abuzz with activity as a grand celebration was underway, with the attendance of numerous influential personalities from the country. The ambience was lively and dynamic, with guests mingling and interacting with each other. The air was filled with joy and excitement, as people from different walks of life came together to revel in the festivities. To enhance the festive spirit, the palace was adorned with exquisite decorations, and the staff were all dressed in their finest attire. The guests were treated to a delightful spread of gourmet cuisine and an array of beverages. The mood was set, and everyone was having a splendid time. The event was not just an occasion for merrymaking, but also an opportunity for people to network and build new relationships. The presence of several powerful individuals added an air of significance to the celebration, making it an event to remember. But despite all the festivities, there were some people who had attended but were noticeably absent from the crowd, where guests were socializing and networking to form new connections. The absence of these individuals did not go unnoticed by the attendees, especially since they were all from the same industry, telecommunication. Inside one of the meeting rooms located in the presidential palace, the room was arranged with 2 rows of seating facing each other, with a long table in the center separating them. If you knew who they were, you would realize that these individuals were the ones who were missing from the crowd. As soon as the dictator finished his welcoming speech and officially initiating the ceremony, these individuals were summoned to the meeting under the pretext of having something important to discuss with them. As they waited for the dictator to arrive and begin the discussion, one of them couldn't help but ask, "What do you think he summoned us here for?" "I'm not sure, but it's likely related to the telecommunication industry or something similar. After all, everyone who's here seems to be from that field," replied the man sitting across from the person who posed the question. Before they could continue their conversation, the door opened and Adolf walked in. They promptly stood up to show respect. Following behind him was Felix carrying a briefcase. "Have a seat. We have something to discuss," said Adolf, as he took his place at the head of the table. Felix stood beside Adolf, knowing that he would soon leave so that he could take his own seat. Once he saw that the telecommunication company owners were attentive, Adolf wasted no time in beginning his speech. He didn't want to waste any time with them, as he had his eyes on a beautiful lady in attendance and planned to bed her by the end of the party. "Perhaps some of you have already guessed that I have called you here to discuss something related to the telecommunications industry," began the dictator. "Yes, Your Excellency," they all answered in unison. "All right, that saves me a lot of time. I have brought my friend Felix here, as he has something important to discuss regarding your companies," Adolf stated. Raising his hand and pointing at Felix to introduce him to the group, Felix simply raised his hand and gave a wave in acknowledgement, choosing not to add anything further as the dictator had already said what he needed to when introducing him. "I will be leaving shortly, but remember, his words are my words," Adolf said before standing up from his chair and promptly leaving the room. Felix was left behind to continue the conversation on his own. Adolf's parting words carried weight, making the company owners take Felix seriously and be willing to fulfill any orders he gave, as long as it was within their capabilities and not harmful to them. After the dictator left, Felix took a seat in the chair previously occupied by Adolf and opened his briefcase, retrieving some folders that he then distributed to the owners of the telecommunication companies. Upon receiving the folder from Felix, they immediately opened it and started reading its contents. During this time, Felix remained silent, allowing the telecommunication company owners to read through the contents of the folders. He didn't want to interrupt their reading or rush them in any way. He knew that the information he provided them with was crucial, and he wanted them to fully comprehend it before any negotiations began. "You want to buy my company?" asked one of them after finishing perusing the contents on the first folder, without bothering to continue reading the following pages. "Mine too. Mine too. Mine too," chimed in the remaining company owners. They were quite surprised that someone was attempting to buy all of their companies, and even worse, that he was giving them the offer with the backing of the dictator. "Are you trying to strong-arm us by using the dictator as your backing and forcing us to sell at a lower price?" asked one of them with anger and frustration in his voice. The man wasn't angry that someone wanted to buy his company, as he was already planning on selling it and leaving the country, since it was no longer profitable. In order to start earning profits, he would have to upgrade the infrastructure of the entire country, which he had no plans of doing. What angered him was the man's attempt to use the dictator to force him to sell it for a low price. "Before you shout at me, first finish reading the documents in your hands. The price is on the last page, which I'm quite sure none of you have opened to read," Felix replied calmly. despite them looking at him like a raging bull ready to jump at him at a moment's notice to kick the shit out of him, no matter the consequences. When they heard him mention that the price was on the last page, they immediately turned to the last page without listening to anything else Felix said, eager to see the offered price. Once they saw the price that Felix was offering, their demeanor changed and they were more willing to listen to what he had to say, especially since they were not emotionally attached to their companies and were about to be forced to upgrade their infrastructure to keep up with the fast-changing world of IT. The amount they were being offered was unbelievable, more than what they would have gotten from selling their companies through normal means. However, as the saying goes, greed is man's greatest enemy. They immediately composed themselves and exchanged knowing glances, realizing that if they were going to sell, they needed to exploit their situation to get the best possible deal. The amount is very small. You need to increase it by about 15%, so that we can sell it without any resentment, one of the owners said, trying to negotiate for a higher price. When Felix saw the group's expression of wanting more money, he made himself comfortable on his chair by putting one leg on top of the other before he spoke slowly and clearly. This offer includes a 10% premium based on your current valuation calculated from profits earned in the past 5 years. If you had read the contents in the folder correctly, you would have realized that we are the ones helping you out. Your telecommunication infrastructure is about to become outdated, which will force you to reinvest any money earned in the following years to upgrade it. However, that infrastructure will be outdated again within a few years, resulting in no profit for you in the upcoming decade. Furthermore, you seem to have forgotten that you will be forced to sell the company to me no matter the price I offer. Offering a 10% increase was an act of mercy for buying your companies without your consultation. But since it seems too high for you, I'm rescinding the offer and offering you only a 5% increase. Any further negotiation or haggling will result in me reducing the offer by 5% continuously until you end up paying me. So, think carefully about what you will say from now on, or you might have to prepare yourselves to become the first visitors of the soon-to-be-opened Gulag. They accepted our offer, and it appears that the dictator's words were the decisive factor in their swift agreement. Felix relayed the news to Aaron. Has he asked about his $20 million remuneration? Aaron inquired while he was at Professor Janusz A. Zadel's residence, where he was collecting Professor's brain data, while conversing with Felix. He didn't directly state it, but he insinuated it, and in response, I assured him that I would transfer the money to whichever bank account he preferred, replied Felix. Once he provides you with the account number, forward it to me so that I can promptly initiate the transfer, as we wish to avoid any misunderstandings, instructed Aaron. Sure. Now that we have completed Phase 1 of the plan, let us immediately start with the consolidation of the company without delay, Aaron said. Of course. When will you be sending us the details for Phase 2? Inquired Felix. I just sent it to you now. Read it and call me back if you have any questions? Sure, Felix answered back and ended the call. 30 minutes later, as Aaron was leaving the professor's residence after completing his brain data collection, Felix called him back. Why did you call back so quickly? Aaron asked. I noticed in the plan that I am expected to assume the role of CEO in the new company. Yes, is there anything wrong with that? Aaron asked, his head tilting to the side looking for anything weird in that. Are you absolutely certain that I am the best candidate for the CEO position? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to hire someone with specific expertise in that area? Questioned Felix, expressing his uncertainty about assuming the role. I understand your concern, but I have complete faith in you. You don't have to worry about doing justice to the role. Just ensure that you appoint a competent vice president from the list I provided and seek their guidance to enhance the company. I selected you for the CEO position because I need someone I trust in that position. There might be occasions when I give peculiar orders, and I require someone to implement them. You meet all the necessary criteria, which is why I have faith in your abilities, Aaron explained. All right, I'll contact you again once I've read through the entire plan with the team, responded Felix before bidding Aaron farewell and ending the call. 2 weeks later, the Rothschilds' compound was filled with luxurious mansion, but they were all eclipsed by the grandeur of the family head's residence. Usually, there was little to no movement within the mansion as the family head disliked being visited for no reason. However, Today was an exception as there were about 16 cars parked at the entrance of the mansion. It was the day of the board meeting, and all the members were present, including those who were responsible for preparing the meeting room. Inside the mansion, workers were shuttling back and forth, ensuring that nothing of importance was forgotten during the preparation for the meeting. Once they had completed preparing the meeting room, they immediately informed the board members. After receiving the call, the board members began to move toward the meeting room to avoid arriving after the family head, or for today, the board chairman. Inside the meeting room, Hebel could be seen talking with his friends, those who participated in cuckoldry and were threatened by Rina using it. Last week, one of them mustered the courage to reach out to the others to check if they too had been threatened with similar evidence. This led to them reconnecting, and they discovered they were all in the same predicament, forming a bond stronger than when they were mere bystanders watching their wives getting pounded by other men. The board members were engaged in small group conversations when Arya made his entrance into the room. As soon as he appeared, the members turned towards him and greeted him with nods, but Arya didn't reciprocate the gesture. He swiftly proceeded to take the nearest seat to the chairman's position. After Arya took his seat, the other board members resumed their discussions, but with a lowered volume. They did so to avoid any potential irritation to Arya, as they were wary of him causing trouble for them. The hushed conversations continued for a few more minutes until the door suddenly opened. The family head then made his entrance, with his secretary following close behind him as he elegantly walked into the room. As soon as the family head entered the meeting room, all the board members, including Arya, stood up to show their respect. They remained standing until the family head had taken his seat. Once he took his seat, the family head nodded his head, acknowledging the greeting from the board members and gesturing for them to take their seats. After the board members took their seats, the board chairman turned to his secretary. Taking the cue, she made her way to the podium and assumed her role as the secretary for the day's board meeting. Without any delay, the secretary called the meeting to order, officially starting the board meeting. The roll call followed promptly, and it was passed without any issue, as everyone was present, and the secretary could already see that. The board members promptly proceeded to approve the meeting agendas. Unlike many other companies where this process could take a significant amount of time, here, there were no proposed items that would not pass. This was because most proposals were brought forward only after gaining the approval of Arya. In cases where Arya did not approve a proposal, it would have to be under the direct orders of the family head for it to reach the meeting agenda. Following the approval of the meeting agendas, the board members proceeded to discuss the CEO's report, followed by the financial report, after having passed the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. The board meeting continued smoothly until it reached the part of the agenda where they were discussing new business. During the new business section of the meeting, the board members would discuss new topics or proposals. When they reached this part of the meeting, Hebel spoke up to propose a new topic for discussion. She had been instructed to do so by Rina. "Shouldn't we discuss what happened to Miss Rina?" Hebel proposed, following the script he had been given by Rina a few weeks prior. After Hebel proposed the topic, all the board members, including Arya, turned to the family head to see if he approved for it to be discussed. "I recall making myself clear that I intended to make an example out of Terry. Why are you suggesting we discuss this again?" asked the family head in a dignified tone, speaking up for the first time since he had entered the room. "I wasn't suggesting that we don't make an example out of Terry. However, are we not going to compensate Rina for this blunder?" Hebel clarified, doubling down. "Do you mean that we should compensate her for her injury?" Yoel asked, following the script. "We need to demonstrate that if something happens due to a mistake of the vetting team, we must compensate her so that it is clear that it is not her fault," Hebel explained, giving his reasoning for the proposal. Arya was taken aback by this sudden change in Hebel's stance, as he knew how much Hebel despised Rina. What happened to him? Why is he taking her side? Arya pondered silently, still sitting quietly. "What do you suggest we compensate her with then?" The family head asked Hebel about the details of his proposal, wanting to understand the specifics of what was being suggested. "How about we bring her back to work and appoint her as the head of Ally Financial?" Hebel proposed. When Arya heard Hebel's proposal, he smiled to himself and thought, so that's where this was heading. "Hebel, you sly son of a bitch." Arya smiled, feeling happy, Instead of feeling angry or advocating against Rena's return to work, the position that Hebel suggested for her removed any opposition he might have had. Ally Financial was currently in a precarious situation, as it had become collateral damage during their war with the Morgans. The company was embroiled in a legal battle with the United States Justice Department over their mortgage practices during the financial crisis, and the outcome of the case could potentially have devastating consequences for the company. During the conflict with the Morgans, the company was used as a tool to deceive and mislead them, causing them to be unprepared for the next move. As a result, Ally Financial is still struggling to survive and is on the brink of bankruptcy. The fate of the company now rests on how they settle with the Justice Department regarding their mortgage practices during the financial crisis. This made Arya nod in approval at Hebel's sinister plan, unaware that it was entirely orchestrated by Rena, plus Nova plus Ava plus Aaron. Arya quickly moved to call for a vote, wanting to avoid any possibility of someone suggesting a better placement for Rena. He knew that Ally Financial was the worst of their family companies and hoped that everyone would agree to Hebel's proposal. Those in favor of the proposal, please raise your hand, the meeting secretary said, calling for the vote. When everyone except the family head raised their hands, Arya smiled to himself, thinking, Rena, this is what you get for fighting me without proper preparation. Look at my people coming up with ways to fight for me and punish you without even a direct order from me.
Tang, tang, tang.
The sound of the hammer hitting the board was heard, signifying that the motion had passed. In that fateful moment, Arya basked in the glory of his victory, a smile stretching across his face, his ego bloated with the satisfaction of having his way. But little did he know that the very hammer that sealed Rena's fate also hammered the first nail in his coffin. The beginning of the end for a once great titan, the downfall had begun. In the hospital, Terry, barely opening his eyes, woke up after 3 long weeks of recovery following his operation. His gaze was fixated on the ceiling, but it was evident that his eyes were filled with hopelessness and despair. As the reality of his situation sunk in, Terry couldn't help but question his own actions. "Why did I do that?" he murmured to himself, his voice trembling with emotion. The memory of the incident that resulted in him getting shot was still fresh in his mind, and he couldn't shake off the regret and the pain. The weight of his mistakes seemed to bear down on him as he lay there, alone with his thoughts. The once energetic and carefree Terry was now a shadow of his former self, consumed by the consequences of his actions. Just as he was about to continue to berate himself for doing that and thinking of ways to save himself, someone entered the room, but since he could not turn due to his body still being in pain, he could do nothing but wait for the person to move to him so that he knows who he or she is. "You seem to have awakened and are healing quite well," a voice spoke as the person drew nearer to him. At the sound of the voice, Terry's hope was instantly rekindled, as he recognized it to be that of Charlotte, the secretary of the man he was spying on. Though it was a struggle to speak due to the painful bullet wounds on his chest that were still healing and making it difficult for him to breathe, he forced himself to respond. "Yes, miss," he managed to say. "Good. That means you can hear and comprehend what I'm going to tell you now," she said. Terry couldn't shake off the ominous feeling that gripped him, as he detected a foreboding tone in Charlotte's voice as she spoke to him. The unease that settled within him only added to his already considerable discomfort. After Terry gave a nod, Charlotte proceeded to speak. "Once you're fully healed, the head of the family will have a discussion with you. You'll serve as an example to all of the workers, and it's crucial that you remember to never speak about Sir Arya, regardless of what they do to you. If you fail to comply, your parents and relatives will face the consequences," she threatened, her tone menacing. Upon hearing this, Terry was overcome with an intense desire to scream at Charlotte for abandoning him after using him for over 4 years, under a promise that had yet to be fulfilled. However, before Terry could even attempt to voice his thoughts, Charlotte turned and left without waiting for his response. She seemed confident that her warning would be enough to keep Terry from ever mentioning Sir Arya's name, especially if he cared about the safety of his family. Terry was left alone, with only his thoughts and pain for company. "You are abandoning me now," Terry shouted in his mind, afraid that if he attempted to voice his thoughts aloud, he might rupture and reopen his wounds. With the realization that his hopes of receiving aid from Sir Arya were now dashed, Terry was overcome with a sense of desperation. He began to frantically consider alternative ways to save himself, knowing that he was now on his own. The weight of his circumstances bore down on him, and he was filled with a mix of fear, anxiety, and determination to survive. Alexander was in his workroom back home in Eden, having returned about 2 weeks ago from attending meetings with other revolutionary leaders. In front of him, his laptop was open, displaying the news that had been announced earlier that day. A telecommunication juggernaut is being born. The 4 major companies, Telesignal, Combrothers, Theory Telecom, and Peak Pitch had been bought out for a whopping $150 million and were now in the process of being consolidated into one giant corporation named Connect. The new company aims to provide high-quality and affordable internet connectivity to every corner of the country. The spokesperson of the company stated that the company planned to invest more than $100 million to modernize the infrastructure, which would result in internet connection speeds almost triple the current speed and allowing everyone to have access to high-speed internet. While some people raise concerns about the potential consequences of having a single entity control the internet connections of an entire country, the government seemed to have approved this consolidation as a way to improve the infrastructure in order to attract further investments. The new company also pledged not to increase prices before they were permitted by the government and would be subject to government regulations to ensure that they adhere to their promise. Consolidation of telecommunication companies can have several benefits, such as more efficient use of resources and economies of scale, resulting in lower costs for consumers. Consolidation can also lead to more innovation and research and development, resulting in better quality products and services. However, consolidation can also lead to monopolization, resulting in higher prices and lack of innovation. Consumers can voice their concerns to the government and regulatory bodies to ensure that the new company adheres to its promise of providing high-quality and affordable internet connectivity to every corner of the country. Alexander felt his heart rate increase significantly when he read the article, as he finally believed that Aaron had really chosen to keep his promise. Alexander felt a surge of hope when he learned that they had obtained the dictator's permission to buy the company a few weeks ago. However, without seeing any progress, he didn't dare to believe it would happen. Today, seeing the news article confirming the purchase, he finally realized that the countdown to the liberation of their country had officially begun. Alexander knew what Aaron planned for the telecommunication company beyond just providing affordable and high-quality internet connectivity. This was why he was so excited after reading the news article, as he knew that the company's acquisition was a crucial step in their plan to overthrow the dictator and bring about a new era of freedom in their country. Now, how are you going to handle the other revolutionary leaders who will try to block you when you start to use the telecommunication company to its fullest? Alexander asked Aaron, despite him not being within the room to answer him. It was just his curiosity, as he was not seeing any way to do so without turning all the members in their groups into enemies unless he assassinated them and blamed it to the dictator, but that would not be the best choice. Alexander sighed and turned back to his work, but his mind kept wandering to the possibilities of a free and just country. He couldn't wait for the day when they would finally be able to break free from the dictator's grip and build a society that truly cared for its citizens. Rena paced nervously inside her office, alone with her thoughts, hoping and praying that the plan she had come up with, along with Nova's help, had worked. Her anxiety was understandable, as it was the first time her plan, along with Nova's, was being executed without her being present to oversee it. Rena's confidence in her plan wavered, as this was the first time she was not present to oversee its execution, which made her nervous. This was understandable, especially since she had gained her confidence from using the plans to force the board members to swear their allegiance to her. She continued pacing back and forth in her office until there was a knock on the door. Quickly, she composed herself and walked over to her chair before calling out, "Come in," and welcoming the visitor inside. "What's up?" Rena asked Chloe after she entered the office. "We received a letter from the head house," Chloe answered, showing the letter in her hand as she approached Rena and handed it to her. Rena took the letter from Chloe and quickly opened it to see its contents. When Rena saw the heading of the letter, which said, "Appointment Letter," she immediately stood up and hugged Chloe in happiness. Chloe was surprised but still hugged Rena back, even though she didn't know what had made Rena so happy. "What is it, miss?" Chloe finally asked Rena after they separated from the hug. "I finally got a position back in one of the family companies," Rena said excitedly. When Chloe heard the explanation, she hugged Rena back in excitement. She had felt quite sad for her boss when she was relieved of all her posts in the family companies. Rena did not stop her hug, but also hugged her back again. After an awkward short moment followed, Chloe bid farewell to Rena and left her alone in the room. "Congrats on getting a position once again." Ava congratulated Rena after they were left alone. "No, it was all thanks to you, your mother, and Aaron's help," Rena humbly replied to Ava's congratulations. "You're the one who worked hard to accomplish and bring the plan to life. All we did was give you the tools and guidance, but you did it yourself, Rena," Ava said back to Rena, who was giving them all the credit. Thanks for saying that. Rena expressed her gratitude to Ava for her kind words, as she had started to feel like she was simply being used as Aaron's pawn and was losing her independence and free will. Ava's words made Rena realize that despite the plans given to her by others, she always had the choice to follow them or not. She also came to the realization that she was benefiting the most from their cooperation and that she was becoming selfish. Rena continued her conversation with Ava after she calmed down. "Now that I have been assigned to the financial company, as you guys wanted, can you show me the plan?" She had previously asked to see the plans, but she was told that it was not yet completed and was still being collected. "A few hours ago, the plan was sent to me. My mother said that it had gone through a few revisions to fit the conditions of your assigned company. Here it is," Ava replied as she immediately pulled up the plan on her screen to show it to Rena. Rena wasted no time and started reading through the plan immediately. She had been eagerly waiting for this information for over a month, being told repeatedly that it was not yet complete. As Rena finished reading the first page, she had to pause and take a deep breath. The information on that single page had almost made her forget to breathe from fear. "Are you sure that they really came up with this plan?" Rena asked, as the plan was something a level higher than brutal. Ava didn't directly answer Rena's question, but instead replied, "It gets worse. Just keep reading." This implied that the following pages of the plan contained even more alarming information than the first page. Rena didn't say anything in response to Ava's comment, but instead quickly moved to the second page of the plan to continue reading. She was eager to find out what other alarming details the plan contained. As Rena continued reading through the plan, her heart sank further with each passing page. Eventually, the fear became so overwhelming that she began shaking uncontrollably. The information contained in the plan was beyond what she had ever imagined, and the consequences of its implementation seemed dire. Ava saw that Rena was becoming overwhelmed with fear, so she quickly turned off the screen and said, "Rena, calm down," Ava said in a soothing tone, reassuring her. She was worried that Rena might faint if she continued reading the plan in her current state. "How can I possibly calm down? Are you sure you read the plan? If you had read it, you wouldn't be so calm either," Rena exclaimed, her frustration and fear evident in her voice. Ava responded calmly, "Yes, I have read the plan." "Then why are you asking me to calm down if you have read the plan?" Rena questioned Ava with a trembling voice. "I am calm because, firstly, I am an artificial intelligence, and secondly, I have read the entire plan. This includes not only the plan of the Morgans, but also the one created by Mother to counter it," Ava calmly explained to Rena. "Ooh," Rena said, realizing that the reason for not getting the plan earlier was due to it being incomplete and the need to create a counterplan. Remembering, Rena quickly returned to her screen to continue reading after Ava reopened it. This time, Rena remained composed and forced herself to finish reading Morgan's plan. After finishing reading the Morgan's plan, Rena immediately shifted her focus to the countermeasures that Anna's mother had prepared. As Rena began to read the countermeasures, her complexion slowly returned to normal, and the color began to come back to her face. "Wow," Rena exclaimed. She couldn't help but be impressed by the countermeasures outlined in Anna's mother's plan. She was certain that if they were able to implement these measures before the Morgans carried out their own plan, it would result in slaughtering the Morgans for the second time in 10 years. 1 week had passed since Felix's appointment as the CEO of the soon-to-be merged company. He was now about to have the company's first official meeting with the vice CEO he had recently appointed. The purpose of the meeting was to deliberate on the necessary measures to be taken after the completion of the ongoing consolidation. Inside the meeting room, the CEO and the Vice CEO Liam sat across from each other, delving into the details of their discussion. 30 minutes had elapsed since the meeting began, and the CEO and the Vice CEO had already covered a variety of topics. One such topic was the fate of workers with identical job roles across the 4 companies that were in the midst of consolidation. We will evaluate their experience and retain those who exhibit strong work ethics, Felix stated before moving on to other topics. They continued discussing various topics until they finally arrived at the subject of upgrading the telecommunication infrastructure. This time Liam interjected, "In order to upgrade the infrastructure, we need to conduct a thorough assessment of the current state of the telecommunications infrastructure in the country. Following this assessment, we can develop a comprehensive plan for upgrading the infrastructure. Once that is done, we will need to secure funding for the project." His expertise in the matter was apparent. "You needn't worry about the assessment of the infrastructure. We already have it," Felix assured Liam as he pushed a thick folder towards him. "Take a look at it," he added. Liam received the thick folder from Felix and swiftly skimmed through its contents to gain a basic understanding. He planned to review it in greater detail after the meeting had concluded. As Liam flipped through the pages, he was pleasantly surprised by the level of detail included in the assessment. It was comprehensive, leaving no stone unturned. It provided him with all the information he needed to know, and even highlighted areas that he might have overlooked as unimportant. "This report is incredibly thorough. Who wrote it, and when was it completed?" Liam inquired, curious about the amount of time that would have been required to produce such a comprehensive assessment. "I don't have an exact date, and there is a dedicated team handling all the planning. However, the assessment should have all the necessary information for our plan," Felix answered concisely. He was also uncertain of the timeline as the assessment had been sent to him together with the Phase 2 plans. Liam moved the conversation forward by suggesting, "Therefore, we should act quickly and begin to develop a comprehensive plan for the infrastructure upgrade." Without uttering a word, Felix slid another folder across the table to Liam for his perusal. Liam picked up the folder and began to sift through its contents. "From the same team?" he asked Felix. "Indeed it is," confirmed Felix, falling silent and allowing Liam to read the materials contained within the folder at his leisure. As Liam perused the infrastructure upgrade plan, he was once again taken aback by its level of detail and thoroughness. The infrastructure upgrade plan that Liam reviewed was nothing short of impressive. It outlined specific objectives to achieve, such as increasing coverage, improving quality, and decreasing costs. What made it even more impressive was the timeline for the upgrade, which included goals for the short, medium, and long term. However, what caught Liam off guard was the budget for the short-term goals. The plan stated that it would be entirely privately funded, with a budget of $100 million. The medium and long-term goals were left without a budget, as another round of assessment is necessary before any decision could be made. The plan also detailed the strategy for introducing new technologies such as 4G per LTE networks, fiber optic cables, and satellite-based services. The short-term plan would be the deployment of 4G per LTE networks, followed by the installation of fiber optic cables as a short and medium-term plan. Satellite-based services would be a long-term plan. Furthermore, the plan addressed the challenge of increasing access to telecommunications services in remote and rural areas. This would involve the deployment of additional cell towers and broadband infrastructure. Overall, the plan was comprehensive and well thought out. Liam was so impressed by the plan that all he could manage to say was a simple wow. Felix chuckled at Liam's reaction and said, "I told you we have a competent team working on this project. The plan is comprehensive and realistic, and it should help us achieve our goals for the infrastructure upgrade." Liam nodded in agreement and added, "I'm particularly impressed with the inclusion of plans for rural and remote areas. It shows that we're not just focused on urban areas." Felix nodded in approval and added, "It's our duty to ensure that they're not left behind in the digital age. It's a win-win situation for both our business and the community." Not knowing the real reason Aaron wanted the whole country to be connected to the internet, Felix asked Liam, "Can you provide me with an estimated timeline for completing the implementation of the short-term plan?" Felix needed to report a timeline to Aaron and was seeking information from Liam. Liam replied, "Due to the high budget, we can hire different teams to work on similar projects in different parts of the country simultaneously. This way, we should be able to complete the short-term upgrade within 3 months at the latest. However, I will need to review the plan in more detail to come up with a more accurate timeline, but I am confident that it won't take more than 3 months." Liam sounded assured while answering Felix's question. After the brief discussion with Liam, the meeting came to an end, and everyone left to return to their respective offices in the rental building. A month later, after traveling extensively across Europe for 2 months, constantly moving from one place to another, Aaron was finally returning home. Aaron boarded the private plane for his return journey to the United States after successfully collecting brain data from the list of individuals all over Europe. "Is everything going smoothly?" Aaron inquired from Felix over the phone during the flight. "Yes, we are currently in the process of consolidating the user information from the 4 companies," Felix explained, updating Aaron on their progress. "Great. So the consolidation will be completed in the next 2 months as planned," Aaron confirmed with Felix. "Yes. We might even finish ahead of the scheduled time since the workers are highly motivated due to the attractive pay which is above the country's average," Felix explained. "Okay, great. See you then," Aaron bid farewell to Felix and ended the call. After putting the phone back into his pocket, Aaron asked Nova, "How many hours do we have left in our journey?" "Approximately 6 hours, sir," Nova promptly replied. "Then I better get to work," Aaron said as he retrieved the virtual headset from the box and put it on while adjusting his chair to a lying position. "Login," he said as he entered the virtual reality system. Inside the accelerated simulated universe. "It's finally nice to have some time for myself after endless travels," Aaron remarked, greeting Nova. "You should consider resting for about a week after you land," Nova suggested to Aaron, concerned about his well-being. "We can think about that after we land," Aaron replied before proceeding towards an empty patch of land and opening the system's shop. Knowledge assimilation involves transferring information directly into an individual's brain, enabling them to fully comprehend and understand a subject without the need for study or practice. Price: 100 million SP. Aaron had finally accumulated enough SP to purchase the information about knowledge assimilation, and without any delay, he swiftly bought the knowledge on how to do it. Following the buying of it, Aaron immediately sat down to allow the knowledge of how to perform knowledge assimilation to be absorbed into his mind. During the entire assimilation process, Nova watched as the knowledge was assimilated into Aaron's mind, while also attempting to detect any potential new knowledge from Aaron's system. However, her efforts proved to be unsuccessful, as she was unable to detect anything important from Aaron's system. After completing the knowledge assimilation, Aaron turned to Nova, who understood the task and immediately began to access Aaron's brain data. Aaron quickly gave his consent to Nova's attempt to access his brain data by pressing Agree at the system prompt that asked for his approval. After Aaron gave his approval, Nova proceeded to download his brain data. She quickly found what she was searching for and learned how the knowledge assimilation can be done. Nova created 2 virtual people in front of them and transferred knowledge to one of them. She then downloaded the knowledge and transferred it to the second person and assimilated it to him. Afterwards, she downloaded the brain data of the second person to check if the knowledge assimilation was successful. After completing the assessment, Nova turned to Aaron and said, "I can use the VR headset to initiate the knowledge assimilation, sir. However, since the headset was not specifically made for this task, the assimilation duration will be quite long, depending on the amount of knowledge to be assimilated." Nova explained to Aaron, "That also works. We will solve it as we go. Now create 10 clones of me and assimilate the knowledge of runes into them. Then have them start practicing the runes," Aaron said to Nova. Nova followed Aaron's instructions and materialized 10 versions of Aaron in front of them. Upon seeing the identical copies of himself, Aaron said, "Give each of them a distinct face," as it felt strange to him to see so many identical copies of himself. Nova complied with Aaron's request and altered the facial features of the clones before assimilating the knowledge of runes into them. She then teleported them to a remote location to begin their training in the use of runes. "Sir, they have begun their training," Nova informed Aaron about the progress of his teleported clones. "Great. Now that we have that taken care of, Let's officially put the brain data we've collected to use, Aaron said. He then pulled up a holographic map of the currently simulated part of the universe, which was just a small portion of the African continent. Send me to Lake Victoria, he requested after looking at the map. Yes. Nova immediately acknowledged the order and teleported both herself and Aaron to the coast of Lake Victoria. Aaron took in the surroundings for a moment before turning to Nova and giving the command, "Create a town here with everything that any researcher in every field would need." How big should it be? Nova inquired about the size of the town, asking if there were any limitations. Aaron replied, "Large enough to accommodate 4 times the number of people on the list," and left the decision of its exact size to Nova after sharing his minimum requirements. Sure, Nova replied and got to work immediately and materialized a city, which included everything a researcher could ever need. The city was not just a town but a fully equipped facility featuring advanced laboratories and novel machines that utilized Nova's demigod-like powers to carry out even the most theoretical of experiments that researchers could conceive. After that, Nova built a public transport system to connect the labs to the residential areas and recreational facilities located away from the lab. "Sir, it's done," Nova informed Aaron after completing the city according to his specifications and her own adjustments. "Let's take a look," Aaron said, and then he asked Nova to give him a tour of the city. Nova eagerly obliged and took Aaron on a tour of the city, utilizing the maglev transport system that traveled throughout the entire city. She seemed excited to show Aaron what she had created, resembling a child showing her father her latest accomplishment. After spending over 5 hours touring the city, they had finally completed visiting all the important parts of the city, despite stopping the maglev train for some time and starting to use teleportation. "You really went out of your way to make it a good place for people to live," Aaron complimented Nova after they finished the tour. "Thanks." Nova felt very happy that Aaron complimented the city she built. "Now let's move forward. Create bodies and use the brain data we collected to complete them," Aaron commanded, officially initiating the beginning of Lab City. Nova followed Aaron's orders and began to create thousands of bodies in the public square of the city. If you knew anyone influential in a specific STEM industry who resided in Europe, you would have discovered them among the people in the square that Nova had materialized. Nova went beyond just materializing the bodies of the people. She also corrected any physical limitations they had in their original lives. For instance, Stephen Hawking was given a healthy and energetic body. Additionally, all the materialized individuals were set to the age of 25, ensuring that they were capable of performing any task they needed to. Nova proceeded to upload the brain data into the bodies, effectively bringing them to life. However, she did not upload all of the data they had collected, as she had to manipulate some of their memories to ensure that they perceived their new environment as normal and did not become overwhelmed or distressed. After finishing the brain data upload, Nova allowed the materialized people to control their own bodies and gave them time to adjust to their new surroundings. After being given control of their bodies, the newly materialized individuals didn't cause any trouble or commotion. They simply looked at Aaron and Nova and showed their gratitude before boarding the public transportation to return to their designated residences to rest. To them, everything was normal as it aligned with their existing memories. After everyone left the public square, Aaron turned to Nova and said, "Now do the same thing again, but this time make them have a runic body and give them the knowledge of runes." Nova followed Aaron's instructions and repeated the same process. She materialized runic bodies and uploaded the runic knowledge along with their brain data. After this group of people also left, Aaron turned to Nova and said, "When my clones finish training on the runes, assimilate it to them and have them try to implement it into their specific fields." After that, Nova teleported both of them back to the place where Aaron usually trained with his runes. Aaron requested that Nova materialize a bed for him to rest, as he hadn't had more than a few hours of sleep at once during the entire brain data collection trip. As for the materialized people, they would officially begin their research in their respective fields the next day. Inside the universal simulation, 12 hours had elapsed since the creation of the new inhabitants, and the morning had finally arrived. The lab city, shrouded in the perpetual glow of artificial daylight, slowly awakened as the sun raised. The newly formed denizens, emerging from their dwellings, prepared themselves for the day ahead, heading to their respective laboratories and workplaces. Before setting out, they ate their breakfast that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, which to them appeared as a normal thing. Once they had finished their meal, they converged at the nearest public transport station to catch a ride to their destinations. The commuters, seemingly moving as a collective, boarded the communal transit system, eager to carry out their tasks and fulfill their roles in the vast simulation. Lucas, a material scientist, boarded a bus to travel from his residence to his work office. Upon arrival, he disembarked and was greeted by a towering building with white capital letters that read Fusion Research Lab, denoting its purpose as a nuclear fusion research facility. With no apparent security measures in place, Lucas made his way inside and took the elevator to the 8th floor, where his lab was located. After entering his office, he swiftly powered on his work computer and began working on inventing a material that could withstand the extreme conditions inside the fusion reactor. The simulation of material structures on his computer was constantly in flux as Lucas adjusted the variables based on previous simulations. As lunchtime approached, Lucas made his way to the lab's dining room to eat his food in solitude. However, his meal was interrupted when a man named Nolan joined him at his table. "Nice to meet you. My name is Nolan," said the man as they sat down to eat. "Lucas, nice to meet you too," Lucas replied, slightly surprised but not opposed to the company. "I'm a technician in charge of printing, assembly, and maintenance of various components." "How about you?" asked Nolan. "I'm a material scientist. I'm currently working on a material capable of withstanding the extreme condition in the reactor," Lucas answered back, introducing his profession. "You said printing. What do you mean by that?" Lucas asked as that took most of his attention. "Ah, that is the new machine that arrived yesterday. If I remember correctly, when you guys finished the simulation and finding the perfect material, you were supposed to forward it to the fabrication department. That department has been merged with us, and whatever material you send, we are capable of printing it perfectly using the new machine." "That's what I meant about that," explained Nolan. Following that, they continued having small conversations throughout the lunch, becoming very good friends. Within the bustling city, there stood another building dedicated to nuclear fusion research, the Fusion Research Lab. Its golden nameplate shimmered in the sunlight, differentiating it from the white lettering of the other research facility. Despite sharing a common purpose, the two labs had their own unique approaches to the same goal. While Lucas was busy working on his material invention, the scientists in the Golden Building were quietly practicing their runes. Each researcher was diligently focused on mastering their respective runes, which were fundamental to their work. Despite being involved in nuclear fusion research, the two labs were approaching their research in two different ways. The facial characteristics of Lucas in this edifice exhibited a subtle dissimilarity compared to those on the opposite end of the building. Presently, he was engrossed in practicing the rune of preservation that he intended to utilize on the material for his upcoming experiment. A vast edifice stood on the outskirts of the city. The name of the facility, Aviation Research Lab, was inscribed in bold white letters on the exterior. Upon entering the building, one could observe engineers diligently sitting in front of their computer screens, striving to develop novel aircraft engines and aircrafts for diverse applications. Their area of specialization made it evident that they previously worked in a research lab affiliated with Rolls-Royce and Airbus. As all of this was unfolding, Aaron, who had just woken up from a 9-hour sleep, was observing the events with Nova. They watched footage from various research labs displayed on the screen. Thousands of small screens were categorized into two distinct colors. Blue screens displayed individuals diligently working on their assigned tasks, while golden screens portrayed people sitting cross-legged and practicing their runes. It was evident that the blue screens were making more significant progress compared to their golden counterparts. "Nova, how many ongoing research projects are there at the moment?" Aaron inquired about the number of ongoing research endeavors within Lab City, which was currently being populated solely by individuals whose brain data had been collected from Europe. 5,873, sir." Rena promptly replied and conjured up a holographic screen displaying the categories of research projects. Aaron could select a category by pressing on one of them, and a list of research projects within that category would be shown. Aviation, aerospace, defense, food and beverage, technology, energy, engineering, telecommunications, chemical manufacturing, materials, pharmaceuticals, and biotechnology. Upon seeing the list of categories, Aaron selected defense and was presented with ongoing research projects related to military aircraft, helicopters, missiles, submarines, radar systems, communication equipment, and other relevant subjects. He then clicked on the energy category and was presented with a list of ongoing research projects related to fusion being conducted by various labs, utilizing different approaches such as magnetic confinement fusion, inertial confinement fusion, magnetized target fusion, Z-pinch, dense plasma focus, laser-driven fusion, and many more. After perusing through a few of the other categories, Aaron turned to Nova and remarked, "It seems like most of these ongoing research projects could benefit from completing the brain data collection within America to speed up the process." Nova nodded in agreement and added, "Indeed. This will also give us an advantage as all research data will be shared amongst everyone who needs it. It will bring together all the brightest minds to work towards a common goal, resulting in a faster pace of research and development. With some of my demigod-like powers, we can even create theoretical material that they come up with and have them reverse engineer them. When do you expect the earliest experiment to yield results? Since everything can be simulated here, we expect the earliest experiment to yield results in a few months, whereas it would have taken several years outside of this environment. That's good. What happens after they finish the experiment?" Aaron wanted to know how Nova reprogrammed their thought process when she manipulated their memories. After finishing an experiment, they move on to the next iteration of the research, continuing in this way until all problems are solved and the research reaches a certain level of maturity. Only then will they move on to the next experiment, Nova explained. "I hope they don't suffer from depression, as it could hinder their ability to come up with innovative ideas," Aaron expressed his concern. The thought of having to conduct research repeatedly, improving it until it reaches maturity and then moving on to the next one, seemed like an endless cycle. "Don't worry, their passion for research will keep them fulfilled, and to address the issue of loneliness, I'll be creating their ideal partners to keep them company," Nova assured Aaron. She implemented this feature to prevent the researchers from losing their creativity, as everyone has their unique approach to generating new ideas. "That's good to hear. Although they may not be real people, they are still created using their brain data, making them a sort of clone," Aaron said in a sigh of relief. "How long till we arrive?" he asked after a short pause. "About 3.5 hours. Remind me when there's only 1 hour left so I can log off," he said, then returned to watching the footage of the research lab workers intently focused on their tasks. Aaron continued to watch everything unfold for the next 2.5 hours until Nova reminded him that he had only an hour left on his flight. He promptly logged off and spent the remainder of the flight in the real world. Upon landing, he bid the pilot, who spent quite some time shuttling him from one country to another, goodbye, went through all the security checks and procedures, and then headed to the airport parking lot to retrieve his car. After paying a parking fee of approximately $3,000 for having parked in the covered lot for more than 2 months, he finally left the airport to go home. After spending a considerable amount of time traveling, Aaron was finally driving back home. Although he had been in constant contact with his family, he still missed seeing his parents, especially his younger brother who loved to play with him. "Brother!" Henry shouted as he ran towards Aaron, who had just stepped out of his car. Aaron caught Henry mid-air, embracing him like a basketball, before setting him down and giving him a warm hug. After he entered the house, his mother greeted him with a warm welcome, saying, "Welcome back." "Thank you. How have you been?" Aaron asked, settling into a seat in the living room as he continued his conversation with his mother. "Not much has changed since you left." "So, how was your trip to Europe?" his mother inquired. "It was quite good. I think you should go on a trip with father." "I don't recall seeing you two go on a vacation since my childhood," Aaron suggested, encouraging his mother to take some vacation. "During your childhood, we couldn't go because we couldn't afford it," his mother replied, her face reflecting the hardships of that period. "But now there is no such problem," Aaron affirmed, determined to help his parents live their lives without any regrets and to encourage them to do what they truly desired. "What about Henry?" his mother inquired, revealing her hesitation to go on a trip without him. "You can simply ask for permission from his school, and if they don't agree, I can take care of him for the 2 weeks you'll be on vacation," Aaron suggested, offering a solution to his mother's concern. I'll talk to your father and let you know what we decide, his mother replied with a smile on her face. She was pleased that her son had not forgotten about them and still wanted them to enjoy a good life, despite his newfound wealth. In that case, I'll spend some time with Henry, as it's been a while since we've played together, Aaron said, and after his mother nodded, he got up and headed towards his room. He was sure that Henry was there as his PlayStation was still inside his mother's room, as he was caught playing in the middle of the night once again. Upon entering the room, Aaron found Henry playing FIFA 2014. He quickly grabbed the second controller and sat beside him, saying, "Let's see if you've improved while I was away. What will I get if I win?" Henry asked, his face displaying confidence in his imminent victory. "What do you want?" Aaron replied with a grin. "I want to go to Disneyland again," Henry declared. "But you have to win first," Aaron replied, turning his attention back to the screen and selecting his team as they restarted the game. Henry wasted no time and selected his team, and they began the playoffs. He leaned forward, showing his intense concentration and determination. Aaron couldn't help but smile as he watched his little brother's focus. However, he quickly returned his attention to the screen, not wanting to get distracted from the game. That night, after playing games with Henry for over 3 hours and winning the shit out of it, Aaron finally retreated to his basement, which also doubled as his workspace. Henry, who was upset over losing, ate his dinner silently, trying to act as if he didn't want to talk to Aaron. He only managed to soothe Henry after he promised to take him to Disneyland, which caused Henry's upset act to disappear like a mirage. "If you were going to agree to take him anyway, why did you continue to win the game then?" Nova asked. With a mischievous grin, Aaron replied, "It's more fun to play that way." He chuckled as he recalled Henry's expression during the game. "And what are siblings for if not to tease and have a little fun with?" he added, before breaking into laughter. "What do you plan to do tonight?" Nova asked, realizing that Aaron didn't have any specific plans from her memory. "I have to increase the speed of brain data collection, but I'm really tired of traveling across the world to do it myself. So, I need to find someone to help me with this task, and I'm here to do the research and select the team for it," Aaron explained as he put on his virtual reality helmet and logged in. Inside the Universal simulation, Aaron greeted Nova and then immediately took a seat that she had materialized for him after he logged in. "Are you officially starting to assemble your private forces?" Nova asked excitedly. "Yeah, since the plan in Eden is already in its second phase, we have less than 6 months to complete the third phase once the second phase is done. That means I have less than 10 months to assemble my forces and make them powerful enough to handle the upcoming tumultuous conditions," Aaron explained. "The time frame is adequate to build a strong organization, but it would be more effective if we don't start from scratch." "I know, that's why I'm going for the people that no one would think of using," Aaron said with a smile that revealed he was planning something devious. He immediately turned to Nova and said, "List all of the American soldiers who were discharged from the military due to heavy injuries in the last 10 years. Nova followed Aaron's command and projected a holographic screen in front of him, displaying a list of all the American soldiers who had been discharged from the military due to severe injuries. The list contained over 50,000 people. After a brief glance at the list, he said, "Remove all those who have no extensive combat experience." Nova quickly removed the names of those who had no combat experience, causing the list to shrink down to less than 20,000. Following another short look, he said, "Remove those who have family members to take care of them." And just like that, the list was narrowed down to about 4,000 people. "Remove those who have not received Special Forces training." The list fell down to 1,400 people. "Remove those that are still loyal to the country." This time, it took Nova a little longer as she had to comb through the remaining people's entire digital history to determine whether they met Aaron's criteria. After a thorough investigation, Nova narrowed down the list to a mere 380 individuals. These unfortunate individuals had suffered war injuries, had no one to care for them, and possessed special forces skills that they were unable to utilize due to their injuries. However, the most significant common factor amongst them was their lack of loyalty toward their country. They harbored resentments towards the Veterans Affairs and other government services for mistreatment, as well as towards their military leaders for giving foolish orders that resulted in their injuries and the shifting of blame to them, resulting in the loss of their rightful disability compensation. How many of them do you think will accept my offer and pledge their allegiance to me if I offer to treat their conditions and restore them to their peak? More than 70% of them, Nova replied. Just that much? I thought it would be higher. Aaron asked in surprise. Quite a few of the individuals on the list are contemplating suicide and might take their own lives in the next 3 months if nothing changes for them. Nova explained in a cold and detached tone. To Nova, anything that was not related to her master or deemed important by her master was just a collection of data points or data sets in her database. She had no emotional attachment or significance to them. How many of them are in the state? He asked, disregarding Nova's unfeeling tone as he was familiar with her programming and understood why she behaved that way. 17, sir. Nova answered while displaying a holographic map of New York State that showed where the individuals in question resided. Oh, a few of them are located about 30 kilometers from here, Aaron said as he zoomed in on the map to locate the nearest individual. After examining the satellite images of the location of the person closest to his own, Aaron commented, "It seems like he's living a very harsh life." Nova revealed, "He is one of the individuals I suspect may resort to suicide. Presently, he is barely holding on by using powerful painkillers to which he is addicted. However, it won't be long before he runs out of money to purchase them, and that's when he may take the fatal step. Can't he just beg for the medicines?" Aaron said, not connecting how will someone kill himself when he can just steal or beg for them. According to his records, it shows that he has a very high self-esteem and he can't bring himself to ask for help despite his worsening situation, Nova explained while presenting the report on the man. That will make it easier for me to persuade him using his self-esteem. All I have to do is promise to give him his previous body back and he will be loyal, Aaron replied after reviewing the man's history.